Well, welcome to today's status chat. We'll keep it pretty short, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the news that we've had this week. I think it's worth noting. And the first place I want to go to is I want to look at the PCE because it was out this week. And depending on the headline and who puts it, you'll know they'll either give it a negative spin or a positive spin. But I think rather than trying to call everything either good or evil, we just look to see what it is first, then kind of let everything soak in on us. So, we've had some movements in like the energy futures, and that's brought some stuff down, brought some of the stock market down. And some people, if they're heavily invested, we don't want to see the stock market come down. But if it's only going up because it's looking like a store of value or better investment, then people might run to it if they think something else is going to tank. Now we look at mortgage rates, and they're also a type of savings, type of hedge against inflation, so to speak. But because they are attached to rates, they're going to fluctuate be hypersensitive to good or bad news. So let's go ahead and look at this. And here's some stories just on PCE. See, PCE is better than feared as rate hike loom. All right. Key U.S. inflation measures post largest annual increase in 3 years. See, they're trying to hit you with that fear, get you to clickbait onto it. Inflation is at a 3-year high, and now many Americans are burning. Okay, and see, we go through all of this. We could go to the government report if we want to, but I think what we'll do is, and this one's saying, well, we got a new Fed chief. Okay, Warsh. I would expect Warsh, if he has a chance, he's going to try to cut the rates. So I think that's probably going to be good overall for the mortgage industry. I don't know that he will, but I know that's what the president wants, and the president can be a bit tenacious at getting what he wants. So I think we're probably going to see that. Thing is, do we see what we need to in the data to give him the excuse to do what they wanted? It's like when certain people were trying to feed the banks money before they retired, they kept interest rates really high, and that helped his special interest. But now that's gone. What's going to happen? We got a new sheriff in town. Let's look at what CNBC, who's not known to be all that conservative. All right, so here we're going to hit the top, and it's going to say core inflation hits annual rate of 3.3% in April as expected. Fed's preferred gauge shows. This is Jeff Cox, but we use him quite a bit because I think he may be working for CNBC, which is not my favorite media outlet, but I think he's at least fair. And since I'm sort of the middle of the road guy myself, I can live with that as long as it's not too blatantly ugly one way or the other. So core key points: the core PCE prices in April rose 0.2% for the month and 3.3% for the year against an estimated 0.3%, which we would be better, right? If we were looking for 0.3 and we got 0.2, that's better. And the 3.3, yeah, so we hit the target there, but we kind of, mixed bag. So it looks okay. We didn't have any surprises, and that's the worst things in economics that we can do is have surprises. While the annual rates were in line with forecast, soft monthly readings could provide some hope that the burst in prices over the previous month had begun to ease. Yeah, well, they're talking about opening the Strait of Hormuz, right, and getting that oil flowing and getting the world back to normal, right? And every time we get talked into it's like, if you ever been divorced, which I probably shouldn't mention, but if you ever been divorced, you start talking like you've had enough, and then suddenly people start getting a little sweeter, a little bit better on you. But really all they're doing is planning for the next wave of whatever they're going to pull. I think that's kind of what we were seeing over there. So if we get some easing, we expect to see what this is showing us right here. The easing in the energy futures or predictions or the prices, current price. So we're all going to look at cost of energy, and that gets to whether or not we're doing the food and energy versus the core. So the GDP accelerated, what I would show that we're busy with our positive growth. Maybe it's not as good as we want, but it's accelerated annual rate of 1.6. So we're still in the black. The first quarter, according to the revised Commerce Department readings, That was below the initial estimate of 2. Yeah, well, Republicans are not immune to revising something down when you're not looking, right? I think that's what happened here. It would be a bit rosy to get the headlines, then when you're not looking, they revise that. That's an old trick. Everybody does that. I don't like it, but they do that. Any rate, it's still positive. It's still positive. So we're still going good that way. We're still in 1.6 is not as good as 2 and not as good as 3, but it's better than -1 or -0.2. All right, so there we go. So are we getting our positive spin or negative spin off of this report? I think it's probably going to be pretty balanced. I've already skimmed through it, which is the reason I had it picked out. Inflation continued to hit consumers' wallets in April. It's always going to hit our consumers' wallet, likely keeping the Federal Reserve on the sidelines until the current wave subsides. Price data released Thursday shows. So, yeah, we would kind of like to see what? High inflation if we want lower mortgage rates. That's backwards. If we're buying stuff, higher rates are bad, right? Higher costs are bad. So it depends on where you are. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index is one the Fed uses usually to make their decision, not the CPE, or not the PCI, but I'm tongue-tied, not the CPI, but PCE. Okay, forgive me. So the PCE is the one that the Fed normally looks at because it tends to be leading. The consumer price is usually the tail end because it's already rippled through the economy at that point, and we're buying it. We're kind of at the last man in line. 0.4% for the month, putting a 12-month inflation rate at 3.8%. The Commerce Department reported economic survey by the Dow Jones had been looking for a prospective reading of 0.5%, which is higher, and 3.8%, which is what we got. So, no big surprise, and it was a little bit better. Excluding food and energy, because energy is what's been messing things up a lot, I think, lately. Prices rose 0.2% for the month and 3.3% for the year, against the estimates of 0.3 and 3.3. So again, they pretty well much nailed it. We're getting better data coming out of this particular group of people in the administration. 12-month level for headline inflation was the highest since May 2023. Well, if that's true, it's true. For core, the annual level was the peak since November of 2023. While the annual rate were in line with the forecast, the soft monthly readings could provide some hope that the burst in price over the previous month had begun to ease. So that's one of our bullet points. And we go through here, we want to talk about the jobless claims. They're going a little bit higher than what we were hoping for. Also, initial jobless claims for the week ending in May 23rd totaled a seasonally adjusted 215,000, up 5,000 from the previous, citing a little bit more, slightly above the forecast, citing a little bit more than the expectations, but it's still not bad. When you look at 5,000, what percent of 5,000 is to 15? It's not going to be a very big ratio, right? It's a little bit more, but not more. So, yeah, I think things are looking pretty good. You watch the stock market, you watch wherever your money's tied up in, watch where your debts are. Always work on getting your debt load down because it gives you a little bit more restful sleep at night, knowing you've got a little bit better shape than you were yesterday, even if you're not where you want to be. It's kind of like taking that Diet Coke when you get that number 6, I guess it'd be Pepsi at Taco Bell, right? Getting that Diet Pepsi at Taco Bell versus the number 6 or whatever it is where you eat too much, right? So you get that diet, a little bit makes you feel better about it. Well, if you do this. So I think I'm encouraged if we can get the oil flowing again and get the world back on its normal. Will it happen? Don't know. If you know, comment below. If you know for certain what the future holds, let me know. Anyway, that's it for this week. I hope I didn't ramble too much, but just, if you got something that's bothering you, I would suggest, if you're looking at news reports, to look at multiple news reports from different types of outlets just to see. Some people are just hoping we fail. I've never hoped we fail. Even when my preferred bunch wasn't running things, I still didn't want to see us fail. Because if we fail, I fail. I mean, I'm in the boat too, right? I also believe in a rising tide floats all ships. All right, we'll see you next week.